All right, Jillian, let's bring in constitutional law attorney Jonathan Turley for a deep dive on this. Does this look on the surface, Jonathan, what Alvin Bragg is doing, as a criminal prosecution or a political prosecution?
I'm afraid this has all of the markings of a political prosecution. It's hard to escape that conclusion. I mean, previous prosecutors rejected this claim, decided not to move on it, including the Department of Justice. And what he's trying to do is to bootstrap a state misdemeanor into a federal alleged crime that the federal government decided to pass on. That's going to be troubling for some judges. He also is facing a tough situation with the statute of limitations. The statute of limitations on the misdemeanor was 2 years. This was 7 years ago. And so he really needs to do this bootstrapping if he even has any chance of seeing a jury, because he needs to get that longer felony statute of limitations to make this even work.
Jonathan, a whole host of analysts over the weekend were saying, Trump does face other potential criminal charges in, I think, 3 other cases, and that the likelihood is that this Manhattan case poses the least serious of a threat to the former president. Are you on board with that?
Yeah, Jillian, I think that the irony here is that if Donald Trump could pick one of these torpedoes to hit, this would be the one. I mean, because he's been arguing that they're politicizing the criminal justice system, and Alvin Bragg just gave him proof positive that that narrative is correct, at least in this case. More substantive threats exist in things like Mar-a-Lago. Those are conventional crimes. They're well-established theories of culpability. So if you had to choose, of course this would be the one that Trump would decide to go forward with first. And what Bragg has done is he's now going to paint all those other cases, if they do end up in indictment, with the same brush. So Bragg has undermined these other cases while he is, in my view, empowered Donald Trump in a very significant way.
So let's talk for a second, Jonathan, about Robert Costello's testimony yesterday. He painted Michael Cohen as a serial liar who's lied about a bunch of things and is lying about this now. Now, Cohen has, and he also called this the Michael Cohen revenge tour. Now, Michael Cohen has lied about several things associated with this case in the past, but what benefit would it be to Cohen to lie to the grand jury now?
Well, Michael Cohen has primarily in the past relied on his flexibility when it comes to morals and ethics. That has been his primary advantage for clients. And so he has a rather checkered history, including, of course, a conviction and a disbarment. That's not exactly a witness most prosecutors would relish putting on the stand. This is someone who threatened everyone from journalists to law students while he was a thug,
but he does know where the bodies are buried.
Trump.
He does know where the bodies are buried.
Well, here's the problem. Yeah, John, is the problem with that exchange. Cohen, again, is going public with this, which is not what the prosecutors would necessarily want. It's rare to have a lawyer get into these types of questions, but Costello insisted that he had a waiver of attorney-client privilege. Cohen went on another network and said, I don't remember any waiver, and he was never my lawyer. Costello then went on Tucker Carlson and showed the waiver and said that this is his signature. That could come back to haunt Cohen, who's already being alleged to have made a series of falsehoods throughout his career. Now, on the eve of this prosecution, he's being accused of either not remembering a key legal issue or, again, misleading the public.
Jonathan, let's talk about Alvin Bragg for a moment, because you told us yesterday that the timing of this potential indictment kind of feeds this narrative from the Trump camp, which is that this is a political move. At the same time, Bragg is not, he's not been DA for that long, but he's not an inexperienced political operative. Why would he lead with this move?
Well, look, Bragg had the right instincts originally. He threw a flag on this case. And that resulted in 2 of his prosecutors resigning. One of them then took, in my view, a very unprofessional and improper step of writing a book about someone who was still under investigation, who had not been charged, let alone convicted. That added a huge amount of pressure to Bragg, and he appears to have caved. And now he's going to take this very dubious legal theory to court based on 2 equally dubious witnesses, a disbarred lawyer and a porn star. Now, the fact is, prosecutors often put people on the stand who are not the very best of the population. But when it comes to Michael Cohen, it's a target-rich environment for cross-examination.
All right, we'll keep following this, expecting maybe something will happen next week. Jonathan Turley, as always, thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.